The gleaming, crystalline spires of the Galactic Military Academy of Keith Moran pierce the perpetual twilight of the Triple Sun system, a stark testament to the Zeltherian Empire's boundless conceit. Within its grand, echoing halls, 67 cadets from a dozen different species stood in rigid formation. Each alien form, from the multi-limbed Vortak to the luminescent Quill, adopted what their biology dictated as perfect military posture. Commander Thek Val, a formidable Zeltherian whose polished obsidian skin shimmered under the alien light, surveyed them with the chilling satisfaction of a predator eyeing its next meal. His 4 independently rotating eyes fixed on each cadet, missing no detail, his mandibles clicking a rhythmic, wet beat that resonated through the immense chamber. "Attention, cadets." His voice, amplified and translated by the omnipresent matrices embedded in the walls, boomed with an almost physical weight. "Today marks the commencement of advanced combat protocol training. You, each of you, represent the pinnacle of warrior excellence from the most civilized species in this quadrant of the galaxy." A collective swell of pride rippled through the assembled ranks. The Vortak cadets, known for their battle-honed physique, visibly inflated their air sacs, a gesture of deep satisfaction. The Quill cadets' bioluminescent patches pulsed in vibrant, synchronized patterns of pleasure, a silent display of their collective ego. Even the notoriously stoic Brentari, whose usual demeanor was as unyielding as their metallic hides, allowed their ear frills to twitch almost imperceptibly, betraying a flicker of satisfaction. All, that is, except one. Maya Torres, the lone human, stood amidst this parade of alien grandeur with a posture that defied military rigidity. Her hands were casually clasped behind her back, her dark eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the opulent alien architecture with an air of profound boredom, as though she were simply enduring another mundane queue at the Department of Motor Vehicles back on Earth. Her practical brown hair, pulled back into the regulation bun, stubbornly refused to conform, with several rebellious strands having already escaped to frame her face. Shorter and more broadly built than most of her towering alien counterparts, Maya possessed a deceptively relaxed stance, one that hinted at a coiled spring beneath the surface, a creature capable of either falling asleep standing up or exploding into action without a moment's notice. Now, Commander Thek Val continued, his 4 eyes, like polished gems, converging on Maya with an almost palpable disdain. "We are blessed with the presence of a Deathworlder among us. A human. From the third rock orbiting an insignificant, yellow star." A wave of hushed whispers and poorly concealed gasps swept through the cadets. Several turned their multifaceted eyes, optical sensors, or bioluminescent organs towards Maya, their expressions a mixture of raw curiosity and thinly veiled revulsion. The notion of a Deathworlder, a species from a planet so inherently hostile that mere survival was a testament to extraordinary resilience, was a concept largely understood in abstract theory, not in living, breathing, uncomfortably casual human form. Maya, utterly unfazed by the sudden focus, simply tilted her head, her gaze shifting to the ornate ceiling of the barracks. She studied the intricate geometric patterns with an intense, almost scholarly interest, as if she'd just discovered the secret to faster-than-light travel embedded in the alien tessellations. Her lack of reaction only seemed to deepen the commander's irritation. At that moment, Instructor Zehran, a nervous Skithari whose chitinous exterior constantly shifted colors to reflect his emotional state, scuttled forward on his 6 spindly legs. Currently, his carapace displayed an anxious shade of yellow-green, a color that reminded Maya vaguely of old, neglected mustard. "Sir," Zehran's voice, a series of rapid chirps translated into a worried stutter, permeated the air. "Perhaps we should commence with the standard weapons inspection? Protocol dictates that all cadets must demonstrate their natural armaments before we can proceed with any combat training exercises." Commander Thek Val's mandibles spread wide, a grotesque approximation of a smile, a sight Maya had quickly learned was anything but pleasant. "Excellent suggestion, Instructor," he rumbled, his voice laced with predatory amusement. "Cadets, you will now display your species' natural weapons for inspection and cataloging. This is standard procedure, vital to ensure proper training protocols are adhered to." One by one, the cadets stepped forward, each showcasing their inherent biological tools of combat. The Vortak cadets, with a guttural roar, extended razor-sharp bone spurs from their forearms, thick and gleaming, capable of rending reinforced steel. The Quills, with a graceful, almost dance-like movement, demonstrated their ability to secrete paralytic toxins from specialized glands beneath their skin, tiny droplets of iridescent fluid shimmering in the artificial light. The Brentari, always the pragmatists, flexed their powerful digits, revealing retractable claws that could effortlessly slice through most known galactic metals. Each display was met with approving clicks, whirs, and detailed notes from the various instructors, their data slates whirring with information. Maya watched this meticulous parade of biological weaponry with a growing, subtle amusement that played at the corners of her mouth. Her turn approached. With the kind of casual confidence that typically sent alien nervous systems into a cascade of alarm, she stepped forward. Cadet Torres, Commander Thekval's voice was a low growl, barely contained disgust evident in every syllable. Display your species' natural armaments. Maya looked up at him, her gaze unwavering, then shifted her eyes to the nervously shifting Zayran, and finally back to the imposing Zeltherian commander. A slow, almost mischievous smile spread across her face, a genuine human expression that few aliens could truly interpret. "You want to see my natural weapons?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough feigned innocence to make it deeply, profoundly suspicious. "That," Thekval snarled, his mandibles twitching, "is precisely what I said, Deathworlder. Do not waste my time." Maya's smile widened, a hint of something feral gleaming in her eyes. "Oh, this is going to be fun," she muttered, a low chuckle escaping her lips. Before Maya could even begin to reveal the unique and utterly terrifying natural armaments of a human, Commander Thekval's four eyes suddenly snapped to attention, their independent rotation ceasing as his personal communicator chirped with an urgent, piercing message. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a flurry of agitated sounds as he absorbed the incoming information. His obsidian skin seemed to deepen, taking on an even more menacing hue. "Change of protocol," he bellowed, his voice carrying the absolute authority of a being who had never known his commands to be questioned. "We have received urgent intelligence reports of potential security breaches within the Academy's outer perimeter. All cadets will immediately surrender their natural weapons for inspection and temporary containment." A collective murmur, a wave of surprised chitters, clicks, and murmurs, rippled through the assembled cadets. The idea of surrendering their inherent biological advantages, even temporarily, was a shocking breach of protocol, a concept almost alien to their species' ingrained pride in their combat capabilities. But the commander's tone left no room for argument. Maya, however, simply raised an eyebrow, a knowing glint in her dark eyes. This was getting interesting. A collective groan, a mixture of chitters, whistles, and low rumbling protests, rippled through the ranks of the cadets. Surrendering their natural armaments was an unprecedented demand, an insult to their very being. The Vortak cadets, who minutes earlier had proudly displayed their bone spurs, now looked as if their very essence had been questioned. The Quill cadets' bioluminescent patches flickered with annoyance, their usual synchronized patterns replaced by agitated, erratic flashes. Even the stoic Brentari shifted uncomfortably, their ear frills twitching more furiously than before. This was a direct affront to their warrior pride, a bizarre turn of events. Commander Thekval, however, remained unmoved by their collective displeasure. His four eyes swept across the room, demanding immediate compliance. "There will be no arguments. This is a direct order from High Command. Any cadet found in defiance will face immediate expulsion and severe disciplinary action." His voice brooked no argument, cutting through the murmurs like a sonic blade. Reluctantly, begrudgingly, the cadets began to comply. The Vortak, with visible frustration, began to retract their bone spurs, the sharp points disappearing back into their forearms with a soft, grinding sound. The Quills initiated a biological process to neutralize their toxins, their glands visibly constricting. The Brentari, with a sigh of metallic clicks, allowed their formidable claws to retract into their digits, leaving only blunt, almost mundane appendages. Instructor Zehran, still a nervous shade of yellow-green, scuttled from cadet to cadet, his 6 legs moving with surprising speed, meticulously overseeing the disarmament. Each species presented its deactivated or concealed natural weapons, a humbling spectacle for beings who prided themselves on their innate combat abilities. The air in the barracks, once charged with the latent power of various alien bioweapons, now felt oddly deflated, almost safe. Then, Zehran approached Maya. "Cadet Torres," he chittered, his multifaceted eyes fixed on her with an anxious intensity. "Your natural armaments, if you please. The commander's orders are absolute." Maya merely offered a small, almost apologetic shrug. "About that, instructor," she began, her voice calm, a stark contrast to the simmering tension in the room. "See, my natural armaments aren't exactly something I can retract or deactivate. They're just me." Thek Val, who had been observing from a slight distance, let out a frustrated growl. "Nonsense, Deathworlder. Every species has something. Are you claiming your insignificant species possesses no inherent combat capabilities? Or are you simply attempting to defy a direct order?" His mandibles clicked in agitation, his 4 eyes narrowing. Maya sighed, a sound of long-suffering patience. "No, Commander. It's just complicated. Humans, you see, we adapt. Our natural weapons aren't really about claws or toxins or spurs. They're about resilience, ingenuity, and, sometimes, a little bit of creative problem-solving." She paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "and the ability to throw a really good punch." A ripple of confused silence spread through the alien cadets. A punch? What was this primitive concept? The idea of a species whose primary natural weapon was a blunt impact seemed absurd, almost laughable, to beings capable of secreting neurotoxins or growing razor-sharp bone. "Are you mocking me, Deathworlder?" Thek Val's voice dropped to a dangerous register, his obsidian skin darkening further. "No, sir," Maya replied, her face a mask of earnestness that barely concealed a twinkle of mischief in her eyes. "It's just complicated to surrender resilience, isn't it? Or ingenuity? How do I turn that off for inspection?" She gestured vaguely with her hands. "It's not like I have a switch for humanity's inherent stubbornness." Instructor Zehran, displaying an even more frantic shade of yellow-green, scurried between Maya and the commander. "Sir, with all due respect, perhaps the human simply doesn't understand the concept. Her species' evolutionary path clearly differs from the standard combat-focused morphology. Maybe she has nothing to surrender." Thek Val let out a booming laugh, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the barracks. "Nonsense. Every Deathworlder species we have ever encountered, no matter how primitive, possesses some form of biological weapon, be it hardened skin, powerful jaws, or specialized glands. This human is simply being obstinate. Seize her, Zehran. We will find her natural armament if we have to dissect her limb by limb." As Zehran hesitated, his multifaceted eyes widening in fear at the prospect of physically engaging a Deathworlder, a low, guttural snarl erupted from the back of the room. It was the sound of a Brentari cadet, a hulking figure named Kthar, whose typically unreadable face was now contorted in a sneer of disgust. "This is an insult to us all, Commander." Kthar growled, his voice a deep rumble. "To demand that we surrender our honor, our very being, while this human, laughs in our faces. She claims to have no weapons? Then she is unfit to be here. Expel her." Several other cadets, emboldened by Kthar's outburst, began to voice their agreement. "Yes. Expel the Deathworlder. She brings dishonor to the Academy." The murmurs grew into a clamor, a wave of alien voices demanding Maya's immediate removal. Commander Thek Val, however, seemed to relish the uproar. His mandibles twitched, and a cruel glint entered his 4 eyes. This was exactly the kind of friction he enjoyed. "Silence," he roared, and the room instantly fell quiet. "Cadet Kthar, your passion is noted. And your point, while insubordinate in its delivery, has merit." He turned his gaze back to Maya, a chilling smile spreading across his face. "Very well, Deathworlder. Since you claim to have no weapons to surrender, then you will demonstrate to these cadets exactly what makes your species so resilient. Or perhaps, you will merely demonstrate your species' inherent cowardice." Maya's expression remained calm, though the spark in her eyes grew brighter. She simply nodded. "As you wish, Commander. Though I warn you, what you're about to see isn't exactly a parlor trick. And it might be a little messy." Before Thek Val could respond, Maya took a deep breath, centered herself. The air in the barracks suddenly felt heavy, charged with an inexplicable anticipation. The other cadets, their anger momentarily forgotten, watched with rapt, nervous curiosity. What could this Deathworlder possibly do? What could a being without claws, toxins, or bone spurs possibly reveal as a natural weapon? They braced themselves, expecting some form of odd human posturing, perhaps a strange vocalization, or even some bizarre display of primitive strength. What they were about to witness, however, would shatter their preconceived notions of biological warfare and redefine their understanding of evolution itself. The true meaning of a Deathworlder was about to be unveiled, not through aggression, but through an act of profound, almost horrifying, vulnerability. The silence in the Galactic Military Academy barracks was absolute, heavy with the weight of alien expectation. Every one of the 66 non-human cadets, along with Commander Thek Val and Instructor Zehran, watched Maya Torres with a mixture of suspicion, curiosity, and outright contempt. They expected a trick, a display of arrogance, or perhaps even a clumsy attempt at defiance. What they were not prepared for was the profound, unsettling spectacle that was about to unfold. Maya took another slow, deep breath, her gaze sweeping over the assembled alien faces. She could feel their disdain, their dismissal of her as a mere anomaly, a weakling in a galaxy of hardened warriors. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through her, not of fear, but of anticipation. This wasn't just about proving herself, it was about laying bare a truth about humanity that few, if any, aliens could ever comprehend. Then, she began to move. It wasn't a sudden, explosive motion, but a deliberate, almost graceful shift. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and her posture, usually so deceptively relaxed, seemed to soften further, losing its internal rigidity. A subtle ripple, like water disturbed by a stone, ran down her back, visible even through the regulation gray uniform. A few cadets, particularly the multi-eyed Zeltherians and the sensitive to vibration Vortak, tilted their heads, sensing something unusual. A low, almost imperceptible groan escaped Maya's lips, a sound of effort and discomfort, but also of intense focus. Her hands, which had been clasped behind her back, slowly came forward, her fingers splaying open as if bracing for impact. Her dark eyes, usually so calm, now held a fierce, distant light, a concentration so profound it seemed to pull the very air around her. Then, the true horror, from an alien perspective, began. The ripple down her back intensified, becoming more pronounced, more unnatural. A faint, sickening crackling sound, like dry branches breaking, began to emanate from her body, growing steadily louder in the deathly quiet of the barracks. The sound made the Skithari, Zehran, change from yellow-green to a frantic, pulsating red, his 6 legs twitching uncontrollably. The Vortak cadets recoiled, their air sacs deflating in shock and revulsion. Even Commander Thek Val, for the first time, showed a flicker of something other than disdain, a flicker of genuine, unadulterated shock. Maya's back arched impossibly, a convulsion that seemed to defy skeletal structure. Her breath hitched, ragged and uneven. And then, with a wet, tearing sound that made several alien cadets retch audibly, a dark, segmented object began to protrude from her lower back, slowly pushing its way out from beneath her uniform. It was an alien, horrifying sight, a process that should have been fatal, utterly impossible for any sentient being. The object was long, segmented, and undeniably bone-like, but it glistened with a slick, organic sheen. It continued to emerge, inch by agonizing inch, pushing out from her flesh, deforming her uniform. The crackling sounds intensified, punctuated by sickening squelches. Maya's face was contorted in a grimace of pure effort, sweat beading on her forehead, but her eyes remained focused, resolute. The other cadets were in various states of horrified fascination. Some, like the Brentari, stood frozen, their metallic hides shimmering with a cold sweat. Others, like the more sensitive quills, had turned away, their bioluminescent patches flashing erratically in patterns of extreme distress and nausea. Instructor Zehran had collapsed onto the floor, his body cycling through every color of the emotional spectrum, a terrified, chittering mess. Finally, with a loud, wet thump that echoed eerily through the cavernous room, the entire segmented structure detached itself. Maya gasped, a ragged, shuddering breath, then straightened, her body seeming to slump slightly, as if relieved of an enormous burden. On the floor behind her, lying in a glistening, organic pool, was her entire spinal column. It was a complete, articulated backbone, still fresh and terrifyingly vital, a grotesque, impossible trophy of a horrifying act. Maya turned slowly, her eyes sweeping over the aghast faces of the alien cadets, then resting on the pale, shell-shocked Commander Thek Val. She looked down at the discarded spine, then back at them, a faint, weary smile touching her lips. Her voice, though strained, was clear. "There," she managed, her chest heaving. "My natural armament. My spine. Literally. Now, how exactly would you like me to surrender that for temporary containment?" The silence that followed was even more profound than before, broken only by Zehran's continued chittering on the floor. Commander Thek Val's 4 eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on the horror on the floor. His mandibles were slack, his obsidian skin momentarily drained of its usual commanding presence. The concept was utterly alien, a biological impossibility that shattered every known tenet of their understanding of life. No species, could survive such a traumatic event, let alone perform it at will. The display wasn't aggressive, wasn't a show of force in the traditional sense, but it was infinitely more terrifying. It spoke of a species that defied categorization, a species whose very biology was a weapon of survival so extreme it bordered on the suicidal. It wasn't about power, it was about something far more disturbing, an unimaginable capacity for pain, resilience, and a perverse, shocking adaptability. The Deathworlder had just redefined what it meant to be a living weapon, and the Galactic Military Academy would never be the same. The notion of human cowardice had just been rendered obsolete, replaced by a chilling, visceral awe. The stunned silence stretched, thick and suffocating, over the Galactic Military Academy barracks. It wasn't merely shock that gripped Commander Thek Val and the assembled cadets, it was a profound, existential terror. The sight of Maya Torres, standing upright and remarkably coherent after literally shedding her spinal column, was a fundamental violation of every biological principle known to the galaxy. The discarded, glistening spine on the floor pulsed faintly, a horrifying testament to the impossible. Instructor Zehran, still a quivering, multicolored mess on the floor, managed to emit a series of high-pitched, distressed chitters. His emotional state was beyond any single identifiable color, a kaleidoscope of pure, unadulterated panic. The Vortak cadets, usually so boisterous, stood frozen, their air sacs fully deflated, their razor-sharp bone spurs forgotten. The quills, their bioluminescent patches dim and erratic, seemed to be actively trying to suppress the memory of what they had just witnessed, their bodies subtly recoiling. Even the Brentari, hardened warriors all, had a distinct pallor to their metallic hides, their ear frills drooping in bewildered horror. Commander Thek Val, a Zeltherian known for his unshakable demeanor, was utterly speechless. His 4 eyes, usually so sharp and predatory, were wide and unfocused, darting between Maya and the gruesome biological artifact on the floor. His mandibles, typically clicking with authority or disdain, hung slack, devoid of any sound. The sheen of his obsidian skin seemed dulled, as if the very light in the room had been absorbed by the sheer impossibility of the moment. Maya, meanwhile, took another ragged breath, her chest still heaving slightly from the immense exertion. She looked around at the petrified faces, a flicker of something akin to exhaustion mixed with grim satisfaction in her eyes. "Well?" she asked, her voice raspy but clear, cutting through the heavy silence like a knife. "Any other natural armaments you'd like me to surrender? Because, frankly, that one takes a lot out of me." Her casual tone, delivered after such a horrifying act of self-mutilation, was almost as unsettling as the act itself. It suggested a level of routine, of commonality, that shattered alien understanding. Was this normal for humans? Was this something they just did? Finally, Commander Thekval found his voice, though it was a strained, guttural whisper, devoid of its usual booming authority. By the void, what was that, Deathworlder?" His question wasn't a demand for information, but a desperate plea for understanding, a fragile attempt to regain some semblance of control over a reality that had just been violently upended. Maya managed a weak, almost wry smile. "That, Commander, was my spine. You wanted to see my natural weapon, my unique combat capability? Humanity's greatest strength isn't just our ingenuity or our stubbornness, it's our adaptability. And sometimes, adaptability means surviving things that should be impossible. Like, shedding your entire support structure to escape a binding or a crushing force." She paused, then added, "It grows back, of course. Takes a few weeks, but it does. It's a bit of a pain, literally, but it's a good fallback." The explanation, delivered with such disarming normalcy, only deepened the alien horror. The idea of a creature voluntarily shedding its central skeletal structure, and then regrowing it, was beyond their comprehension. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a survival mechanism that spoke of a history of unimaginable hardship, of environments so brutal that such an extreme adaptation was not just possible, but necessary. It painted a picture of a death world far more terrifying than any of them had ever conceived. The Brentari cadet, Kthar, who had earlier demanded Maya's expulsion, staggered forward, his metallic voice a mere rasp. You mean, your species, this is a normal biological function?" Maya shrugged, a gesture that, given her current internal state, seemed oddly defiant. "Not normal in the sense we do it every Tuesday. More like a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. When you're facing something that's going to crush you, or trap you, or just generally make your day worse, being able to literally slip out of your own skin and bone can be pretty handy." She winced slightly. "Though, I admit, the shedding part is less elegant than, say, a snail. More like birthing a really big, bony, painful slug." Commander Thekval's eyes suddenly snapped back into focus, new, chilling realization dawning upon him. He slowly turned his gaze towards the other cadets, then back to Maya, his mandibles twitching as he processed the implications. If humans could do this, what else were they capable of? What other horrific, impossible biological marvels lay hidden beneath their deceptively fragile exterior? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, a spine he now suddenly found himself appreciating with an almost desperate gratitude. The concept of a Deathworlder had just been redefined in the most visceral way possible. It wasn't just a planet of dangerous predators, it was a planet that forged creatures so resilient, so desperate to survive, that they could defy the very laws of biology as the galaxy understood them. The cadets, who had prided themselves on their retractable claws and secreted toxins, now felt laughably ill-equipped. Their natural weapons seemed like crude toys compared to the terrifying, self-sacrificing adaptability of the human. The Academy's protocols, its training manuals, its entire understanding of combat and survival, suddenly felt utterly inadequate. How could you train against a being that could literally shed its own skeleton? How could you contain a threat that defied physical form? The security breach that Commander Thek Val had announced now seemed almost trivial compared to the existential breach Maya Torres had just inflicted upon their collective understanding of life itself. The commander stared at the discarded spine, then back at Maya, a terrifying, new respect dawning in his four eyes. This was not merely a cadet, this was an enigma, a walking paradox, and a potential weapon of unimaginable, unpredictable power.